is no limit to setting goals and adventures for oneself. Doesn't matter what your age is, you can still dream and hopefully put those dreams into action.
Maybe we belong there too. Maybe we're not far away at all. Maybe we're as near as the sunrise that we meet, the hand we hold and the ground beneath our feet.
We started on April 29th. Very gray, blustery morning, waves crashing onto the beach there at Canal Park. But it was a great morning because we were surrounded by friends and family, including our two daughters and our 4 grandchildren. And so we took off, walking down the boardwalk, kind of like the Pied Pipers, with people following behind us, and crossed the lift bridge and onto the Minnesota Point beach. And we kept losing people behind us as we went, but it was an amazing morning, really, to start off. The wind, nature was giving us a really big send-off, as well as our family.
Wow.
So we got across and got into Wisconsin. First day was 12 miles, and the thing about Wisconsin shore, even though it wasn't very long, was that it involved a lot of river crossings. We knew that beforehand, but we had no idea what level the rivers would be at. And luckily it was a dry spring, so they weren't real deep. There were only a few that we knew we couldn't walk across, that we'd have to swim or get a boat. But we did get wet, and Mike was much more willing to just plow across the water to begin with. I was trying to keep my boots dry, but gave up on that after a bit. We got into Red Cliff Reservation and walked through that land and met the vice chair, whose name is Marvin Defoe.
And I have a young boy. In fact, today's his birthday. He's 8 years old today. But he asked me yesterday, we were talking about surviving, and he asked me about what we need to survive. So I told him, I says, well, you need 4 things. 4 things you need. Number 1, you need food. You need food to survive. Number 2, you need air. You need air to survive. Number 3, you need water. You need water to survive. And number 4, you need love. That's what you need to survive, son.
He mentioned how it's his hope that these bands all around the lake will join together, and with that combined strength, they should be able then to do more to protect the lake, this resource that has been so important to their culture for centuries. Ashland, Wisconsin, which at 10:30 in the morning it started to rain, and then by about noon it was changing to sleet, and when we finished at 3 it was snowing.
What a day. We started out with heavy winds, we had rain, we had snow, we had 30 to 40 mile an hour winds coming through here. The temperature has not increased past 40 degrees today, and you can see here on this vehicle that it has been a touch of winter.
We got in then to Michigan and into Ontonagon, walking the beach most of the way from Porky's up to Ontonagon was on the beach, and got to the lighthouse there and had a really interesting tour of this old light, which is now quite a ways away from the water because of the channel that they put in there. But the gentleman who took us around shared his great love of the history of that town and community.
It was built in 1866, replacing the original wooden frame lighthouse that was built here in 1851. Ontonagon was from 1850 up to just after the Civil War, probably the busiest and largest port on Lake Superior.
Really?
55% of the copper that was produced in the United States for the Union War effort came from this area.
what turned out in this hike that to be a lot of fun was walking in the water. Not in the beginning of the streams, but other places. And so our first real challenging walk in the water was on our way to Frida, the town of Frida. And that's where we had to walk around the base of these cliffs, sandstone cliffs. I had looked from Frida back at these cliffs with my binoculars, and I thought, well, I think we can do that, Mike. He had thought we couldn't, but I looked and said, well, I think we can. And he was very happy that I was the one that made that call, because once we got there, we discovered, well, yeah, you can walk around it as long as you don't mind being thigh deep in the water and walking very carefully. I wasn't afraid of falling because of getting wet. I was afraid of falling and getting our cameras, all our electronic gear wet. But that water was cold because this was only early May, and after being in it for even 3 minutes, your legs were somewhat numb. The Keweenaw Peninsula, we went up one side. We couldn't go all the way around the top because it's just too rugged. There are no trails, there's no road. We tried to go around in a boat, but the fog came in. And so we went to the other side, drove over to the other side and walked down. And there, in a community called Bettagree, we encountered something we'd never seen before. Water, the Lake Superior water, which is normally crystal clear, looks like Caribbean water, was yellow, like paint. I mean, it would wash in, it was just soupy looking, yellow soup. And it turns out that was all pollen. The spruce, they told us, this part of the Keweenaw is heavily forested with conifers, and they said that this was all the pollen that it was filling up the bay that we were in. It was just weird. And that particular stretch of shoreline had some of the most beautiful and amazing rocks that we walked on. Mike took lots and lots of pictures because the patterns were of squiggles and zigzags and squares and loops and bullseyes even. It just was kind of bizarre. We started describing it as alien landing. Our friend Bill and Beth Blank joined us at the end of May, friends that helped support us on the trip. Mandy went back home for a bit.
We knew that, they're walking 15 miles a day and they're going to come in very tired at the end of the day. So we, it's one of our goals just to make everything as easy as we could for them. And Beth is a great cook, so she made a lot of meals for them. And just make it as easy for them as they can, because 15 miles over rugged terrain is a tough day, and they're not so young,
Oh, yes, they are.
They're our age, and in fact, that's one of the things that they're interested in showing people, that just as a retirement age, you can still do magnificent trips and big adventures.
I'm very passionate about protecting fresh water and all of our natural resources for future generations. And that's something I've been taught in my family that's important. Both my parents, I grew up on a farm, but they always taught me to respect the land and to take care of it. And that's something I think that we all should do, that it's a good thing to be taught. And to learn about it, not just to protect it, but to go out there and explore and learn more about the world around you. That's something I think everybody should do.
This part of the trip then took us through the Huron Mountain Club, which we'd heard about. It's a private land holding, and people had told us, well, before the trip, how are you going to get through the Huron Mountain Club? And we weren't sure in the beginning, but through Facebook we met some people who had been guides there and knew other people that were guides, and so they were able to get us onto the property, and that was our biggest hiking day. We crossed that property. It was 19.8 miles or something. A long day, but it was beautiful. And we were into Marquette, had some time off there, 3 days off. Rained when we arrived, just as Jim Radford came to meet us to do some videoing.
One of my highlights are the people we've met. That's the point I want to make. Just great people, great stories that have been part of it. And so rather than going on with all of the highlight list, let me ask you to ask us questions, and then we can satisfy what you need to know about. Yes.
Oh, Pictured Rocks, which is an amazing, beautiful area, National Lakeshore. We walked across that. We also took a boat out and interviewed some kids on the boat that were there with their school group, and they had some fun things to share. Have you guys studied much about fresh water and the issues related to that?
Yes, we've been studying on the Asian carp that are trying to make their way into the Great Lakes. And our teacher's been telling us a lot about it. Freshwater supply is one of the biggest in the world.
Exactly.
She's really trying to educate us about that. And actually, we're going to go on a sailboat trip in a week.
Really?
And we're going to take water samples and all this stuff to find out how the water's doing.
Great. Do you guys think, with what's happened in the Gulf with the oil spill, do you think?
I think that'll be a big issue all around.
At the end of the Pictured Rocks is the area of the sand dunes, and that's an amazing spot. We dune hopped down to the bottom. I think it's 300 feet down. They say it takes you about 20 minutes to get down and it takes you about 2 hours to come up if you wanted to come back up. But we stayed at the bottom, walked that shoreline into the town of Grand Marais, Michigan, and it was horrible. Some of the hardest walking we'd done, because at least 3 miles, 3 hours, I can't remember which, was cobble. And we were just exhausted and it was hot. But another fun walk was another water walk, Tequamanon State Park in Michigan. There's a Tequamanon Bay. People had told us, oh yeah, you can walk that shoreline. So we got out there, started at the river, and it turned out there really wasn't a shoreline. This was a very, very shallow bay, and we walked through water for 5 miles. It was very, not even up to our knees most of the time, and it was warm. And we watched fish swimming around our feet and clams making tracks in the sand. Getting on the bridge.
But the bridge walk was an extraordinary event, and it was probably the one day that we were most committed to other than our start and end day. And that was because there's only one day a year that the bridge is actually open for people to walk. The International Bridge going from Michigan to Sioux, Canada. And so we walked there, but because it was halfway, we had our grandkids and our daughters and our son-in-law meet us there. So it was a party. We walked across that bridge on a gorgeous day, and that was just great fun. After that, it was a little more subdued. We went out to Gros Cap, which from Sault Ste. Marie, Canada, you have to walk west all the way out to get out past that St. Mary's River and that little bay that all the ships come in, and that before you can turn and go north again. So it's a long walk out on the roads and through the city of Sault Ste. Marie and out in the country, and then finally in Gros Cap we picked up the Voyageur Hiking Trail. This is the first time we got onto that trail. Now, the Voyageur Hiking Trail Association had been helping us plan some of our route, and they've put a variety of trail pieces together. And we picked up a lot of them, just like on the Minnesota side, we picked up a lot of, or Michigan side, we picked up a lot of North Country Trail. Here we picked up a lot of Voyageur Trail Association. So that was quite neat, but Gros Cap, it was hard hiking. It was high and tall, and the hardest part though was there were sections where if you slipped on the dry spot, you went knee deep or more in the muck, and which I managed to do one time at least. And but fascinating was that it goes in this part of the trail, it goes underneath these massive wind generators. So as we approached them, and you heard that, oh, 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 and all of a sudden you look up through the trees and there's this generator above. Goulet Bay leads into Goulet Peninsula, which is a big obstacle for us. We actually walked across this really shallow water just knee-deep at the most for a very extensive time between the big bedrocks at the end of the area that I would say is just north of Grocap and then approaching the Goulet Peninsula.
Amanda spotted these 2 sandhill cranes yesterday when we were out walking, and Mike spotted them again this morning, so we thought we should stop and get some pictures.
We were able to get to the best fish and chips place on the lake, bar none. Chiwequedo, I think is how it's pronounced.
Can you pronounce the name?
Chiwequedo.
And what does it mean?
Big Bay.
Big Bay. Oh, thank you.
Chiwequedo. Chiwequedo.
Native owned, First Nation. The husband, as we understood, goes out fishing during the day, and the wife and the relatives cook in the afternoon, and people were coming from all over the place. And even as we were walking, people were pointing across the bay and say, "Oh, over there's the fish and chip place. Over there's the fish and chip place." And we were so glad we got there.
Well, I believe that the Spirit blows in the wind. And I believe in the trees that blow within.
Then we got up to Pancake Bay, which is a provincial park, and we camped there. And it would be the most pristine sand beach I think we've ever seen. We immediately said, there's nothing better than this in the Caribbean. Water may be warmer, but nothing more beautiful than this. That was an extremely great place. Todd Starling, our Canadian contact, met us over there. And we just stayed there a number of days because, of course, we moved the RV ahead, then go back and start walking sections until we got up to the RV. But on the way then, one of the highlights for us, we met with Ellen Van Laar, who is an extraordinary artist who does these amazing colored prints that bring out the dragons and bring out the essence of the country. And it's just this vivid coloration and patterns that we love. Dan Bisson, who my grandson would love to have him do a dragon party like he described on our video.
Well, about 5 years ago, we had an adventure with my grandkids. It was a treasure hunt. And during the treasure hunt, we made reference that there was dragons at one time here. The oldest one said, nah, there's no dragons. The youngest one said, maybe there could be dragons because it's all caves.
Yeah.
So the following year, I devised this dragon adventure. So I got a neighbor that lived over here that they have never seen to dress up like a wizard. And we converted his woodshed into a wizard's house. And we made up a secret scroll and it was written in an Anglo-Saxon rune, which is a language nobody knows. And we had a book to decipher it.
So you know what the rune stones are?
Yeah, and so I built this thing. It's 25 feet long. It's in a cave. It has rib cage, wings, vertebrae, the whole thing. And the head was attached at that time in there. So I let the kids figure this out. We took them over there and we told them the wizard's only here every 200 years. And so they had to go over, and he was really good. He rose to the occasion. He was like a Shakespearean actor. He just went wow into this part.
We did get to the Agawa pictographs and saw Mishapishu, which is one of probably the most prominent and famous pictograph on Lake Superior and in this region. The Lake Coastal Trail there is hard, really hard walking. Sometimes it's more like climbing or crawling, but the favorite spot was from Orphan Lake to Catherine Cove. We got out there and you walked lots and lots of rocks on the shoreline. It has color in the rocks and pattern in the rocks unlike anything anywhere else. It was just a great day. We went with Walt and Lynn Pomeroy.
That's the legacy that our generation needs to protect
Yep.
and pass on. That's why all the environmental impacts need to be looked at very, very carefully. You try to minimize them where you can, because many times it's generations or more. When you could look at scars on the landscape from 2, 3, 4 generations ago of mining on our oil in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, and maybe the chemical and the mineral environmental impacts have minimized now, but certainly the scars and the holes in the ground are still there as a unfortunate negative legacy. So you need to be very careful when you think about that kind of development, and certainly its environmental impacts.
Then did our portage. Now, when you're paddling, you portage by paddling to the shore and then walking across. Well, in this particular trip, we walked the shore, and then we had to get in a boat to portage around the Crown Land and Puckasaw National Park, where there's no trails. So we worked with Naturally Superior, took a wonderful Voyageur canoe trip. Now I say wonderful because we really had a good time, but it's the last one I'm ever doing. So that's the truth in advertising on this. You lose a little flexibility. We got windbound 7 days out of what was supposed to be 10 days, but became an 11-day trip. We experienced a helicopter rescue of one of our assistant guide. We got into bays that were so remote and so beautiful that people will look at it and wonder what part of the world we're in. But this is true wilderness. This is the best example of what wilderness really is, because you're out there. You're not able to just get on a road. Or in this case, we couldn't even get on a trail. We ended up walking across the north end. Now, Kama Bay is the northernmost bay of Lake Superior. We were there with Tobias, our webmaster, and he celebrated the fact that we had 2,000 kilometers there. And we walked into Nipigon, and at Nipigon things changed, because at Nipigon we began walking south. At that point, it was the first point where we actually started to think about the end. It was a strange feeling to have hit the peak and know every step we took, or basically every step we took, would begin to bring us back to Duluth. And on the Sibley Peninsula, which is a very large peninsula and the last big peninsula of the trip, we walked on roads until we got into Sleeping Giant Provincial Park, where we did a variety of different trails, some of them extremely difficult, lots of elevation changes, lots of extremely exciting things to see, like a white-tailed deer, a massive buck, the most beautiful one I've ever seen, a 10-pointer swimming across the bay and then coming out of the water, or standing in a shallow water right in front of us. That was extraordinary. We had Sam Cook, the outdoor writer from the Duluth paper, who is one of the most prominent outdoor writers in the North Country, with us that day. We did 16.1 miles and ended up, the end of the day was a wonderful little 500-foot climb up a clay and rock cliff that left all of us huffing and puffing by the time we got up there.
Well, yeah, I guess I thought there was always a possibility that you might not make it, because I'm your age, and you know, we're all in pretty decent shape, but you never know what can happen, and it's a long way, and it requires a daily. I didn't question your discipline or your drive to do it, but I remember Colin Fletcher, I think the writer, said, this is morbid, but he said something like, I decided long ago to live as if I was going to live forever and know that I might die before lunch or something. And I wasn't worried about you guys dying, but, you know, things can happen. And I think it's remarkable what you've done, and I think it's an inspiration to many, many people, some of whom you've talked to and some you'll never hear from. But that's a big deal, to get up and walk 15 miles and then go to bed and get up and do it again the next day. I say most people haven't walked 15 miles in a long time, and they haven't done it day after day ever.
The abandoned railroad grades are hard. As it is, all of the ties are separated in such a way that they're never where your step is going to be. But now when it's abandoned, the rails are gone, then they twist and turn, and then you got all that gravel to walk. So it was extremely challenging, and yet between the beach roads and that abandoned track, we were able to get all the way into Thunder Bay. When we got down to the Pigeon River, we went out on Finger Point, which is a trail that everybody should do. It starts right at the information center just across from the customs, and it takes you out and gives you one of the most dramatic views you'll ever see, including the point of land that separates Minnesota from Canada. It was extraordinary. It was absolutely beautiful and made for a very reflective time for us to think about 2 months of extraordinary, wonderful experiences in Canada, and gosh, we love Canada. 2 months was great. We could have spent more. Then we got down into Grand Portage, and then ended up walking with Alan Abed and his 2 sons, and they walked along the beach in Grand Portage, and we thought, this is so great, because here we are talking about grandparents, and here we are with this, there's 3 generations of us walking this beach. The Grand Portage Tribe is one of our sponsors, and we're just really proud of what they're doing with their new school and efforts there, and Alan and his kids helped to close that loop with us. Minnesota was a different shoreline for us. It was different in that it's the shoreline we know the best, and along the way we planned a much shorter hiking because we knew we'd be meeting lots of people, seeing lots of friends, and that changed the hike. It also meant that what we were doing in some ways were on the victory lap coming into Duluth, and as we met people and had them join us and went out for pizza and did other things along the way, it became less of an expedition and more of a summary of what we had done and where we had been. There goes Kate, moving down in the rain to the music of Tina Turner. Going with Tina, she could go forever.
Actually, in some ways, it's almost impossible for me to grasp that fact that we walked around the lake. But we did it, and we felt really good about it, both mentally and mostly physically. I mean, I feel pretty good physically. You not so much in your knees, but you did it under really tough conditions, I guess I'd have to say. And you know, the fact that our goal was to bring attention to the issue of freshwater and Lake Superior, I think we talked to people as much as possible about that and those issues. We won't know, I guess, ever whether we made a big change in people's lives that way. We can only hope so. We hope that the data we gathered on the way around about the shoreline and the rivers and the invasive species will be put to good use in the future for education purposes and policy.
My hope is that our hike not only addressed Lake Superior and fresh water, but it provides inspiration for those who have their own dreams and are waiting to pursue them. We did it!
How long that in the picture?
3 miles, that's all that's left. Today is September 18th. It's 4 months and 3 weeks from when we started. This is Duluth. We're walking the city streets, and this is one of the most fantastic days of our life. We had no idea what to expect. It's pretty overwhelming, I'd say.
Yep. And we have an absolutely perfect September day in Duluth on Lake Superior. It's cool, it's sunny. The leaves are starting to turn. It just really couldn't be a more perfect day. It's kind of a contrast to the day we started, though.
We've encircled this extraordinary lake, and we are going to take the next few months to be able to grasp what we've seen, where we've been, and to remember all the spectacular people and places that made up our life for these 4.5 months. And you can see here, it is a people's trip. Oh yeah. It's just like a Volksmark. This is wonderful. I mean, it feels so good to be coming in with all of these people and to share our story.
I think you'll be talking about this for years and years to come.
I think so. Well, we want to hear other people's adventures because we really want to inspire others to. Yeah. Thank you. Yep. Well, they got. We, at this point, have just reached. This is the 1,550 mile mark right here. So. As those of you who were here at the beginning know, we engaged in a mini ceremony, if you will, of offering tobacco to the lake. Now, we have the wonderful good fortune of having Grand Portage, Red Cliff, and Bad River reservations as sponsors. And it was very important to us. We met with First Nation groups as we went around Canada. They've been on this lake since the glaciers melted. They have been here for all of this. They are the culture of the lake. And all of the rest of us are latecomers who are sharing in this massive and beautiful place. Even now, it's still hard for us to comprehend the size of this lake. It's just impossible. We'll look across and see little shadows over there and say, we were there. Well, were we there? And so one of the things that we want to do, we want to honor those reservations and the First Nation people by offering tobacco, which is a gift that was not designed for putting in a pack and adding nicotine and everything else to. It was a natural product. This was grown by Alan Abed on the Grand Portage Reservation. He picked this and said, would you please use this for ceremony? And so we offer this to Manitou, to the Great Spirits, to Gitchigami, Gitchigumi, Mishipishu, which we want to also remind you that this walk was done because fresh water is so important to all of us. We can talk about all the other issues of gold and oil and everything else in the world, but we can't live without fresh water. 1/10 of all the surface fresh water in the world is right behind me here. That's amazing. We can't sacrifice that. We can't allow something to happen to that. A BP kind of experience here would be a disaster. And you would say, well, it can't happen here, and then on Lake Michigan while we were walking around there was an oil spill from a pipeline. So yes, it can. And so, so we're there for fresh water and to remind us of the fresh water. We're also doing this because we want to challenge all of you to live your dreams, to stand for the things you believe in. We're doing it as a legacy for our kids and our grandkids. And we think that it's extremely important that you do it for your kids and your grandkids, that we all do this and to keep that. So again, when we offer this, we just offer this with great emotions and thanks. One of the things that we did as we traveled, and we hope that you all know the book Paddle to the Sea. Well, here is Paddle Around Lake Superior. We brought this along. It was connected to all of our grandchildren, whose names are on the bottom. And we took this all around and we took pictures, and Amanda, who is here, our great support person, and she put this on the education page, and so where was Paddle? And we put clues and that. Paddle has been with us throughout this adventure. It was something we wanted to do that our grandkids could connect with. And so he's been in the water. We're not going to leave him here. We're going to take him with us. He's going to be part of us. But appropriate, I may be in the water, but that's okay. But this has been a companion in spirit, and we we do recommend that you know that great book, and it was written in 1939. It's a classic. So this has been ours, and it is one of the ways we've tried to connect across the generations from grandparents to grandchildren. Everybody, all these great faces and smiles and warmth and waves. I mean, what could be better than that?
It's perfect weather.
It's good to be home.
It is. It is good to be home, and it's been home since we crossed the Minnesota border, and we've thoroughly enjoyed all of it.